2.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the General Board Christian Recorder Dialogues. I'm here with two of our best representatives of the AME Church here in the Sooner State. We have with us the Reverend Keith Mays of Vernon AME Church, Tulsa, and my brother from another mother, Taylor West, who is a member of that church, but also is also known as one of the carers and guardians for my chair, the Right Reverend Francine Perkins. Shout out to the Publications Commission chair. So, gentlemen, we wanted to talk today because we've seen some amazing work that's happened at Vernon and in Tulsa, and both of you have been involved in that work. And we know that I believe it was Reverend Robert Turner who helped sort of get that process going in Greenwood, but things have gone to a higher level. We've gotten some great articles about that. So just catch us up for what's going on in Greenwood and Tulsa and reparations.
So on June 1st, our mayor declared it Tulsa Race Massacre Observance Day.
Wow.
And so that is what we've been working on as just the people at Vernon, because in the bottom of our basement is where the people actually hid and ran into it. So that's where we're working.
Wow. Now, Reverend Mays, you told us, about Vernon's role in the community as a church. As the pastor of that church, what was it like when you first got there and took over that charge, and what was the spiritual life of Vernon in the Greenwood community?
Well, it was a humbling experience, first of all, when Bishop Mitchell reached out to me to give me the opportunity to serve the people. Mm-hmm. And I do say that literally, to serve the people. Mm-hmm. And I'm humbled and honored to be able to serve. Vernon has always been a beaconing light in Tulsa. The state of Oklahoma was founded in 1907. Vernon has been there since 1905 on a Cherokee reservation. So Vernon has had a strong relationship with the Cherokee Nation and also been a pillar in the black community with several of the founding fathers, S.M. Jackson, the great uncle Tito and Michael Jackson, with his funeral home, and the other Barney, who owned the first detective agency in the United States, was black.
Wow.
And so some very prominent people, some of the doctors, I hate the Christies here, fill in some of those names, but a very rich history of people who made significant contributions. One of the things that I was hoping had been in Bishop's documentary was the fact that Vernon's name comes from Bishop William T. Vernon. William T. Vernon was the first African American to sign U.S. currency. In 1906. President Roosevelt made him the Registrar of the Treasury. And he was very instrumental in those all-black towns in Oklahoma. As a matter of fact, he led a charge to make Oklahoma a black state. And so it didn't become a black state, but at one time it had over 30 self-sustaining all-black towns. I think we have about 13 now. And so there is a cultural awareness there. One of the things Taylor just shared about what Mayor Monroe Nichols did on June 1st, but let's back up. In August of last year, the outgoing mayor, G.T. Bynum, signed, he made a commission, a reparations commission, that adopted the model that one of our stewards, Christy Williams, she was a co-author of, called Beyond Apology.
Let's take a moment for a beat there. Beyond Apology. And I would say that Ms. Williams has sent us several articles in the Recorder, I think one of which we just published in April. So I hope y'all read it, and if you didn't read it, go back and pull out your April papers and read it. But go ahead, Pastor.
Since 1921, Oklahoma has been apologizing. Since 1921, Tulsa's been apologizing. Well, the Japanese after World War II got more than apologies. The Jews got more than apologies. The natives got more than apologies. Only the black people were forced to settle for an apology. So it was Greg Robinson, our councilwoman Vanessa Harper, and Christy Williams worked for about 3 years putting together what was called the Beyond Apology report. And they presented it to the city. Mayor G.T. Bynum, our former mayor, who was Caucasian, he saw the relevance of it. And when he signed and authorized the commission to put together a reparation commission, he had his sons there, gave Christy the pen. He wanted that ink pen to always be housed at Vernon.
Wow.
Because he appreciated Vernon's role in that march, in the fight, and the struggle. Well, something happened miraculous last August. We were fortunate to get the first African American mayor elected.
Wow.
You got to keep in mind, Tulsa's is only 8% black.
Wow.
and he won by over 17,000 votes.
Wow.
And so it was not just the black community, but all the community saw the value. He won against a long-standing council member, county commission member, who had a political machine behind her.
Wow.
But the people actually spoke. He was barely 40 years old.
Wow.
I think he just turned 40 or 41. So that was major. He was a transplant. He came from Texas to the University of Tulsa, played football there, went on to become a House representative, and just a very courageous young man. And what Taylor and I are very proud of, when it came time to doing his interview with Good Morning America, the city wanted him to do it at City Hall. He chose to do it at Vernon.
Wow.
Good Morning America came and interviewed him at Vernon.
I remember you sent us that
Yeah.
clip. You know, just thinking about what Vernon means. I know we're here and we just talked about today, as we're recording this today on June 17th, it's important to remember what June 17th means to us in the AME Church. But I know before there was a June 17th, 2015, there was Black Wall Street.
Right.
And I remember watching The Watchmen, that series, and how The Watchmen, you know, for those of y'all who are, you know, comic heads, like part of that was looking at, they were testifiers to seeing the massacre. And I remember talking to a friend of mine who was Japanese. He was an international relations historian. And in political science, well, his field was IR. He was like, Tulsa, I know the Tulsa Massacre. And I was like, how do you know the Tulsa Massacre? He said, it is the first recorded instance of airplanes being used to bomb civilians in the world.
Right.
And I was like, this Japanese guy who doesn't know much about Black history knew about Tulsa more than what Americans know about what happened on Black Wall Street and what happened in Tulsa.
A lot of people, Dr. Thomas, aren't aware that the first charter plane service was owned by a black person right there on Black Wall Street during that time at 6 Crafts.
Wow.
Right there.
Wow. And just thinking, you know, of the generational wealth that was lost, of, you know, what it meant to and we emphasized this Black Wall Street, but there were many Black Wall Streets. And in that season of race riots, many of them were erased. And I know AMEs also, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, and forgive me for missing the dates, we had someone from Rosewood come to talk about the Rosewood descendants who did get reparations from Florida, but it's been very difficult for Tulsans to get reparations for the victims. And now the city at least did something. So walk us through, you know, some comparison, contrast, and just what this process has been.
One of the things that gets lost in translation is that economists and historians have proven that the dollar circulated a minimum of 38 times in the black community before this bombing. That's major generational wealth. And so it really wasn't about Dick Rowland, a young man and a white lady in an elevator. It was about the land grab. There were more black millionaires in Tulsa than anywhere in the world except Harlem, New York in 1921. And the highest per capita income for African Americans was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so the 40 blocks that they bombed, you go down, you see OSU campus is sitting there, swallowing up Langston, which it was supposed to not offer any class that Langston offered.
That was the land grant. That was the.
And they put it right in the middle of Greenwood, and Greenwood was rerouted around OSU.
Wow.
And so now when you come to see Vernon, you'll see some black storefronts all down Greenwood, but Vernon is the only freestanding black-owned property left.
Wow.
Yeah, so Vernon has a very rich history. Taylor was blessed to be able to be reared in that church. I'm a native of Columbia, Tennessee, and we have a history in Columbia, Tennessee that very few people know. Thurgood Marshall got his start there. It wasn't with the NAACP. The first post-World War II race riot in 1946 was in Columbia, when James Stevenson, who had sent a radio home to his mom, Gladys Stevenson, who was the only one like it in the city, took it to Castronaut to be repaired, and the shopkeepers called her the N-word, "You won't get this back," and slapped her. When her son came back from the army, he went up, threw his man through a plate glass window.
Wow.
And so that was a real race riot. Tulsa was a massacre because all the blacks who had sent their guns home from the service from World War II, they were housed at A.J. Morton & Son, which was the first black funeral home in Tennessee. and they were housed there. And so when they came down to get them, the National Guard ended up coming. Those black people fought back. And there was another black funeral home in Columbia that got blackballed. It's still in operation today because they were burying the white people at night because the whites did not want the media to know how many whites were being killed. Z. Alexander Luby recommended a hotshot young black lawyer to come down to represent those black people. And it happened to be a young man by the name of Thurgood Marshall. And when you Google Thurgood Marshall, Columbia, Tennessee, you could see that they have him with his hands up. They set up a speed trap and caught him leaving town, and he wasn't driving, but they had him to blow in the officer's face and accused him of being drunk, and they were going to take him out and lynch him, but a group of blacks overtook those cops and freed him. Wow. So he went from there to the NAACP. So I came from an area in Columbia, Tennessee, that a lot of people don't know that history because we were taught not to talk about it. Wow. So when I got to Tulsa, that's what made this so important to me, because I had parishioners who didn't know about it. Community officers of the church who didn't know about it because they were told not to talk about it.
Because of that generational
fear.
pain. And so, Taylor, that exactly brings you to where I want to go. I mean, this is your blood. This is your history. Just wow. How does it feel? How has this shaped you and your faith to be a descendant of all of this?
First, I was completely taken back that I had never heard about this, never mentioned. But it was a white history coach, teacher, that made sure that we were learning this in a predominantly Republican conservative high school area, Owasso, wow. which means the end of the Trail of Tears.
So that was the end. Wow.
Yep.
Like right down from where I live. Like I live off of Old Hickory Boulevard, Old Hickory named for Andrew Jackson. Right. There is a sign that says, this is part of the trail. Wow.
And the end of the Trail of Tears is right there, and that's where I went to high school. So being a descendant of all of that, it hurt me because I now and then understood why we were so poor, why we never knew how to start a business. I don't know a single black person from back in the day that said, yes, I have my own business. Today there's entrepreneurs. The word now is entrepreneur everywhere. We didn't even know what the word entrepreneur was. And so to be able to see where we came from, I know where we're going simply by the leadership of our city, but it's more about the leadership of the church.
Wow, wow, wow. So talking about that comparison between Rosewood and Tulsa, when the fight for reparations for the survivors did not work or was judged to be, we have the evidence, but it's, I don't even know what excuse they used, but they basically said, we have evidence, but we're not going to pay. What was the reaction, and how did you all pivot to work with the city, or were these both parallel actions?
Well, let me share this, Dr. Thomas. There was one time that the federal government tried to take Vernon to make it a museum as the only surviving structure from the race massacre. The university tried to take it to put dormitories there. That was defeated. The city took Vernon to court once to try to take it to make it a museum as the only surviving structure. This same city, the same municipality 2 years ago, the judge dismissed Vernon from the reparation lawsuit to say we didn't exist during the massacre, because after the massacre, the Vernon was incorporated. Same parent body, same AME Church denomination, same pastor, same officer. It was just an INC because of the changing of the governmental structure. And so my challenge to the judge was, you got married, your last name changed, but it didn't mean you didn't exist prior to getting married.
Wow.
So it was just a stall tactic to outlive the descendants. Vernon can actually prove the harm. When you walk in Vernon, you see the concrete columns, you see the indentions where it was melted. Those same concrete columns still support the building. Dr. Mark Tyler came yesterday for a tour, and it blew him away to see that. That's why we say it's a church that could stand the heat.
Wow, wow, I like that.
Yeah, you see the double brick. They couldn't understand why the pastor insisted having double bricks at the time, but it was that shielded those 300 to 400 people those 2 days when they were there. And so one of the things with the reparations where we are now, former Mayor G.T. Bynum A lot of people are criticizing. He signed it on his way out the door. Well, at least he signed it.
At least he
signed
signed
it.
it.
He signed
There you
it.
go.
And so what's so important that he signed it is because he was Caucasian. Had Monroe Nichols came into office
They
and
would've
signed
said,
it,
there
there
he
would have been
go.
more resistance.
There he go.
But Monroe inherited it,
Yeah.
and it's put some teeth in it. And so he's working with the commission. As Taylor said, on June 1st, he announced his $105 million budget plan. And initially, we were approved for $24 million to start our housing in North Tulsa for down payments and housing assistance. And so Taylor and I both spoke before the council last Wednesday to try to get them to support Mayor Nigger's recommendation. And housing is just the first stage. There's going to be some scholarship monies, some reclaiming some properties that were taken away from communities. We're starting the genealogy to get the true descendants so they can get what they're rightfully owed. So it's going to be a beautiful process.
And just to put this in context, first of all, I'm glad you shouted out my colleague, Dr. Tyler, because he announced in our Publications Commission that he got a grant to start doing these rides through the country. And I know
Right.
I was telling Taylor earlier, I remember my earliest memory of Reverend Mabe was on that bike riding the annual conference. So he and Mark, were riding bikes. So you'll get to see that on Dr. Tyler. So he's doing videos. So he'll be sharing that on this YouTube, and we'll be sharing that. But just to think, what does reparations look like? Housing, scholarships. I was at a conference in DC, in New York, at the UN, the Permanent Forum for Persons of African Descent. And mind you, these are people from all over the world, African descendants, who have come to talk about eventually establishing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of African Descendants. There's already a United Nations Declaration on the rights of indigenous persons, but they're looking at Afro descendants. And part of the discussions of this session of the forum, that started 2 years ago, and it's probably going to take about 6 or 7 years to make the declaration that will then be sent to the UN General Assembly, is reparations. So the whole forum about reparations. And there was someone from Greenwood who took the mic and talked about what happened in Greenwood and what the local city did, and urging the nation states, because in this conference we had representatives from governments as well as civil society talking about Tulsa did this. It is tangible. It can be done. We need to see what we can do. And I also want to highlight Pittsburgh, which was, I think, one of the first instances that we were able to share about reparations. A similar story, since that land was taken from Bethel, Pittsburgh, and the Pittsburgh hockey stadium is now there. And the hockey team paid the church back for what they did. And Reverend Dale Snyder and the church at Bethel, Pittsburgh helped work through that. So I'm glad to see that Greenwood is now finally getting the justice that it deserves.
One of the things, Dr. Thomas, just when you mentioned about land, one of the things that I'm super excited about is to do a land audit to see how much of the land that the city took or that other businesses took, and figure out and see, will you do the right thing to either give it back, help them move in their business. So when you talk about the land is so important. The white folks are just coming all through the north side community where our grandfathers and grandmothers had homes, but now they're just run down. And so they're just coming in and buying up programs. And so with the reparations housing program, it's not just helping you get the house, helping you renovate the house, but educating you on all the things that comes with owning land.
So as we close out, what are the next steps? So you've testified before, the commission's been formed, the testimony's been given. So what are the next steps?
Right now, we are advocating for $1 million, is it $1 million, to be from the city's budget to continue the mass graves investigation. We are waiting for we are waiting for the Greenwood Trust to be fully funded, and our mayor said it should be funded by next year.
Wow. One of the recent discoveries was a World War I veteran, black gentleman who was in a mass grave. These persons were buried without ceremony, buried without dignity, buried without having their names called, and all thrown into a mass grave. Christy was a part of the original Mass Grave Oversight Committee, and I watched her in tears even at the council meeting talking about the little babies that she carried from those graves. And 2 years ago, the city, in an unsensitive move, put those kids back into the same grave wrapped in a Tulsa flag. And so we're fighting those kinds of things to get the oversight committee put back together.
Wow.
Which they took out of sight.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I just remember like a few weeks ago, some skulls that were taken to Germany for experiments in the 1900s from New Orleans were just returned. And there was a whole ritual. They did African libations, drumming, as well as a Christian service to re-inter these people. And I never will forget this photo. In Namibia, Germans liked skulls for some reason. It was phrenology, you know, thinking that black people's heads were different because of the bumps. So they took Herero skulls and Nama skulls from Namibia to Germany to experiment on. And the first modern genocide in the world was in Namibia. And the AME Church is very strong in Namibia. And I never shall forget seeing the chief's tears when that skull came back to Namibia. So to think that in Tulsa right now, y'all are fighting to make sure what remains of these people can at least be interred with some dignity.
Not only that, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Odawale, who's the only black archaeologist in Oklahoma, has worked very closely with us, and she's helped us become owners of 5,000 artifacts from the race massacres, verified artifacts. And so now we're starting a fundraising project to try to build our own museum to house those artifacts.
Well, I mean, fundraising, so if y'all watching this, give Vernon a call, because they could use your help, because more than ever, if we don't preserve our history, who's going to do that?
Where did we go in December in Illinois?
We just went to Evanston, Illinois.
I want to say that because Evanston was the first city to get a major reparations budget approved. And Robin Ruth Simmons there, who was the architect of that, she's worked very closely with us to the point last year she brought the first repair conference to Vernon. We hosted it, and so we went up and our mayor put in the budget. He led our whole reparations commission. We went up in December and
he came himself. He came himself.
He's hands-on with this.
It was his first week in office or so.
And Robin Ruth Simmons was in New York at the conference talking about Evanston. So, I mean, this is all full circle. And we're so proud that we're proud of the legacy of Greenwood, and we were proud that you all haven't let that legacy die. And that you are fighting for the justice that they so rightly deserve. So as we close,
I just want to say there's one thing that is not dead and that is still speaking that we're working on are the trees on the ground. And so that's what they're doing now. They're testing the tree samples to see what kind of story, the impact, did the bombs hit harder here? What can we find in the soil and in the seeds of the trees?
So the trees could tell us. Wow.
National Geographic is sponsoring this, and 2 weeks ago they had a program at Vernon. They had several of their explorers. Chris is a Nat Geo explorer. They came through and they taught us that and showed some of the videos.
So the Explorer program, that's like, I've heard of it, but what is the National Geographic Explorer program?
They make 15 explorers a year. And so it's an honor to get that. And 5 of them and their projects came together to do the story of trees and
just
telling the story.
That the memory, because we think about, trace of rings and the rings were out, but one would think that bombs in an area would, just to think. Wow. I'm glad you brought that up. Go ahead, man.
I want to say this, Christy Williams, who was one of the authors of the Beyond Apology Report, was elected the chairperson of the City of Tulsa Reparations Commission. I serve as an at-large member, recommended by the former mayor, and so we needed a young person, and we fought and we got that young person to be Taylor, because I recognize that he's a very bright, brilliant young man, very ambitious young man. And even at Vernon, too often times in the AME Church, we push our young people to the side. We put our young people in a box. We don't allow them to have a chance to be expressive. And so we are alienating as a church. We are discriminatory as a church. And I know this is what the interview was about, but for too long, we are pushing our young people to other denominations, other places. I see so much promise in Taylor, so I didn't ask him if he wanted to be a steward. I put him on the steward board.
That's right.
Because I know he loves God, I know he loves his church, and we have to be intentional about making our young people feel included. We have to be intentional to have diversity within our church. And so I'm thankful to have Taylor there, thankful to have him on this reparation commission. I see great things for him. And he'll make sure that Vernon is always at the table. He'll make sure that our young people have a voice. As long as I'm there, I'll make sure he has a voice.
Amen.
And so we thank you, Dr. Thomas, for allowing us to be on the TCR platform.
Yeah. So
That's-
Taylor, we're going to give you the last word, man.
Listen, that's how you keep the legacy and the story, the history of the AME Church going, is by bringing in those young people into the room.
And you here, you in the room.
We here.
And this is your table.
I'm the table.
That's right.
I'm the table.
Because in a few days, you're going to be Dr. Thomas's age.
Oh,
and
Lord.
after that...
Okay. All right. We thank y'all for being
here. Because I watched him grow up. And it don't seem like it was that long ago.
Wow.
I watched him being a very aggressive, ambitious YP deer. And wow. And then now...
It's crazy you're watching the...
So I see, y'all are close to the same age, but there's a span. And so we have to make deposits as we go. And so you will reach back and get somebody like he's reached back and getting you. And we got to keep that going.
And that's right, because the AME Church is a family, and I thank God for pastors like you, Reverend Mays, who picked up a baton and knew that the story needed to be told, and knew that space needed to be made at the table for the future.
Absolutely.
Thank y'all for being here tonight.
Bless you. Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you so much.
All right.
Bless
We'll
you.
see you all next time.
Bless you.